Welcome back to another week of Unemployed with Mike Schaefer. Kaleb Henry joins here on a Monday. Let's just get this out of the way. After 1 week of being unemployed and having a podcast that was, about being unemployed while talking about Nebraska athletics and everything else, I now have a full-time job. So I will be hosting a morning show with Connor Happer. Some of you might remember that was a thing that happened in Lincoln in 2021. Prior to that, we did the recruiting hour for like 2.5 years. And then for 4 glorious months, it was the Happer and Schaefer show. And we have been chasing that high ever since. We had tried to bring it back a couple different times, and it has finally occurred. I was not expecting it to happen the way that it did or with the swiftness in which it occurred. But here we are. It does not mean anything for this podcast. Maybe there is a different name at some point in time. Right now, I am apt to leaning into the idea that I am an idiot who now has a job that also has a podcast in which it says Unemployed. So we'll figure that out. But what we don't have to worry about is the quality of content, because I'm in charge of that. So I can handle that. That's good, right? Like, last week was okay. I think people enjoyed it. I know who my guests are. I got that all lined up. We got a Nebrasketball Tuesday coming up. We're going to have somebody in for that people know very well, and they're going to enjoy as we talk about the undefeated Nebraska Cornhuskers. We're not going to get into a lot of basketball today. So if that's kind of what you're looking for, unfortunately, there might be some in the free advice. We're going to bring back some free advice from last week. But today, like most days here in January, is going to be about the transfer portal. So, Kaleb, I don't know if you happen to notice. I don't know if there's any reason that you would be paying attention to such a thing. Nebraska, pretty active in the portal. And as always, when we are having a building blocks conversation that is brought to you by Bubbles and Blocks Child Development Center in Lincoln, 3 convenient locations. Open spots today. Give them a call. Find them online. All right. I don't know where we want to start with this because, as I said, quite a few things happening for Nebraska in the portal. Let's just go with an old friend alert here. What were your thoughts when the rumors started swirling? Or maybe you thought it right away, Kaleb. When Daniel Kalin went into the portal, did you think, hey, there's a chance for a Nebraska reunion here?
I thought there was a chance, specifically because if we remember back, like, he was in to be a Husker before Dylan Raiola. And then it became the question, if you go back a couple of years, which from your previous coverage, like, it was, is he going to stay committed to Nebraska? Okay, he is. Oh, now he's on campus. They're both freshmen. And then he goes and he leaves and he goes to Virginia. So when you were looking at what quarterbacks can you get, you had the Minchie 24 hours. You get the Kalin. And then even before that, when you were looking at, can Nebraska get at least two quarterbacks, because you're going to need the depth. You don't just need someone competing for a starter. You need the depth. Yeah, as soon as you saw Daniel Kalin in there, it was like, that's someone who has been at Nebraska, knows Matt Rule, does not necessarily know a lot of Dana Holgorsen, because he only got a very brief stint with Holgorsen, coming in at the end of his redshirt year in Lincoln. But it's someone who brings familiarity into more of a depth role, who is also able to get more on-field game reps this year. So there are things that you look at with Kalin, and it checks a lot of boxes, even if it's not that high-end guy that you're expecting to come in and start.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I like here is this is someone familiar with the program, familiar with the coaching staff. He's familiar with the players. I mean, Daniel Kalin was a huge part of that 2024 recruiting class even coming together. I mean, it's funny you don't remember it at the time, but Dylan Raiola joined at the very end of the class. It was Daniel Kalin that got Ja'Cory Barney to commit. It was Daniel Kalin that was instrumental in helping bring along some of these other guys that committed. It was Daniel Kalin that was sort of a big, peer recruiter. Carter Nelson, I don't think, ends up at Nebraska without Daniel Kalin. So it was a situation where he was really, really involved And unfortunately, his career as a recruit, as a player, has always just been, dovetailed or sort of encircled by, I guess, Dylan Raiola. And so I understood why he initially would have considered decommitting from Nebraska when there was talk of Michigan State in December of 2023. I understood last year, though I thought it was a bit short-sighted because of exactly what played out, why he stepped away from Nebraska and looked for opportunities elsewhere. I felt like he could have positioned himself to be that backup ahead of a TJ Lateef. He could have had those opportunities against, UCLA and Penn State and Iowa. But here he is again, back with Nebraska. He's a great, great kid. I mean, when I go through the Rolodex of players and recruits that I've talked to, I mean, that is a guy that he was great to work with. He really was. I mean, and not just in that, he gives you information, blah, blah, blah. No, he's just a genuinely great kid. He's someone that you root for, someone that you want to see have success. I'm excited he's back in Nebraska. I'm intrigued by this quarterback battle that, how did you pronounce the name? The pronunciation? Do we have a pronunciation on this that's correct now?
Kalin.
Okay. So myself and several others have been saying it wrong for a while. All right. So that Kalin.
Not Colon.
Not Colin.
I've heard plenty of Colins over the last week.
Colin. You see, you just made me do it. Colin, Lateef, and Kalin. This is a better looking picture in the spring than really Nebraska had last year, quite frankly. I mean, obviously, the argument there, Dylan Raiola versus Colin, but still, you have these quarterbacks that have at least some experience, have played in the Power Four, and it is an opportunity, for Nebraska to try to build on that. And if you're worried about injury with a running quarterback, you've got guys in Lateef and Kalin, assuming Lateef stays. That's the big thing until the portal closes. Assuming he's here, and I don't know that he'd be jumping in now, but assuming he's here, you've got a room that's a little bit more stocked up, and we'll see what that means. But I thought that was, of the additions, certainly interesting. Now, the two that I'm kind of fascinated by for an entirely different reason, Kaleb, is Nebraska brought in Victor Evans III. Is it Jason Shiggs? Is it Jacine Shiggs? Do you have a guess on that one?
I did not. In my head, when I saw it, I just went with Jason.
I did too. Yeah, Jason. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll go Jason Shiggs at this point in time, and Victor Evans III. I mean, so you have these younger defensive backs in a position room where, how many times in the last couple of years have we talked about how just big the defensive back room is, and there's going to have to be some movement there, and things are going to have to get cleared up, and we're gonna need to get some answers. And they just added a couple guys, and then Braylon Prude and Larry Tarver are back, and certainly feels like we're headed to another spring where there's a lot of defensive backs on the roster.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things you and I talked about last week in our building blocks discussion. One, you need to kind of improve just about everywhere on defense, but we talked about what you want defensive line, talked about what you want linebackers, but defensive backs, and especially defensive backs that can come in and tackle, that was a big thing that we both harped on. I think plenty of times on the sixth floor during the season, not just last year, but maybe in past years as well, but obviously a week ago. And I think you get that with Shiggs coming in. That's a guy who already has over 100 tackles in his career. And when you're looking at DBs that are able to do that, that means he's not afraid to go get into somebody. And that's not to say that every DB is fearful of that. That's just tough to do when you're lined up 10 to 15 yards off the ball and there's a guy that's got you by 80 pounds running at you. That's a tough thing to do. And I know it's football. You have to mentally be able to do that, but this is a good addition. And it's nice to see that Nebraska is shoring up multiple defensive spots, Shiggs being one of them coming in there, but you've got as I go and I pull up my entire list of guys here, but you've got Victor Evans coming in from FIU. You've got
McDougal.
You've got McDougal. So it's all right, that's certainly helpful on your back end to go with what seems like a lot of talent that's still here even if you lost a Malcolm Hartzog that you were going to try to get back and rehabbed and ready to go for one more round, as he's off to, what is it, Arizona?
Is that where he ended up at? That sounds
Hartzog
right.
to Arizona.
Okay.
Where he will reunite with Dwight Boodle the second.
Okay, look at that. Dwight Boodle ended up over in Arizona, where he was just at. He was somewhere else before. Yeah, so he's a multi-time transfer portal guy at this point. Yeah, that's going to be a really common thing. I had somebody ask me the other day if I thought that they were doing hometowns from Sunday Night Football, because we were going to enter this era where people might have like 3 different schools. So which one would you actually answer for the school that you're playing for? So maybe we're going to go back to playing for your high school is what matters.
So what? Yeah, probably. Was it McDougal who's played at, or was it one of the defensive line transfers who's played at now 4 or 5 different Big Ten places?
Anthony Jones,
yes,
who was at Oregon and then at Indiana and then made a stop at Michigan State, I want to say, and then UCLA and now Nebraska.
So when he goes up there, he'll say Big Ten Conference.
Yeah, I mean that's not a bad thing. I will point out though, people were really loving that joke with him, but he started his career at Oregon when they were in the Pac-12, so he might just go up there and be like, "I represent the real Pac-12, not the fake one that they're bringing back."
Classic SEC quarterback Colt McCoy.
Well, we know that the Big Ten wants to claim Sue and Levante David, whatever else. I understand it's not like Nebraska's produced a lot of other players in the time in between.
Yeah, I think
I mean, at least Levante played in the Big Ten.
Yeah, but that I think has a lot more to do with the Big Ten saying, who can we prop up from X school? They're like, you guys have definitely been through it. We have to go back to these other guys, like literally right when you joined the league to right before you joined the league.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just this defensive back room, we've discussed, like, you lose Sierra Wright, they're not going to have Deshaun Singleton. So you're going to have to replace some of these guys. We saw against Utah at safety, it was an area where it's like they got to get somebody. That's why McDougal feels like a really important addition out of what Nebraska's brought in so far. Of the, what are we at? 12, 13, 12, where we're at 13 transfers,
and now so a JUCO coming in as well,
and a JUCO, but he doesn't count as a transfer. He's addition to the.
He's a 2026 class signee. It's dumb.
Yeah, this is fun. This is going to be easy to just sort of label everything going forward. But yeah, so of your 13 additions, I don't know, and this is going to be something we're going to dive into here shortly, where I'm going to have you blindly rank Nebraska transfer additions as part of something I'm going to try to do all week. Make my guests do some blind rankings because I find it fun. We'll see if anybody else enjoys it. I don't care. This show's for me.
Hate it. We all hate it already.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So we'll get into that a little bit. But McDougal's a big one. And then I want to ask you this: when Nebraska has a success like Andrew Marshall last year coming from Idaho, does that make you think they are in a prime position for evaluation for a guy like Shiggs, or even not Justin Evans, but Victor Evans, who's coming from FIU? Like, if they're able to identify Andrew Marshall, and he was, I thought, really good. I thought he had, of the small list of defensive highlights from the game against Utah, his pass breakup was maybe number one. And he played, I thought, really well this year. I mean, so did the fact that they evaluated and they got an Andrew Marshall, and they had to beat out of Miami for him, so clearly it's not like there was nobody else going there. But does something like that give you a little bit more hope when you're looking at a guy like a Shiggs or an Evans? And then, even Jameer Khan, like, it wasn't so much as a defensive back, but as a special teams player, he was really valuable for Nebraska too.
Yeah, it does. And I would also, when looking at this staff and their evaluations, I don't think has there been just definitive miss after miss, other than going back to like the quarterbacks. Like you were bringing in Jeff Sims and you're trying to get stuff going year one. But like, think about this last year. You would have wanted Elijah Pritchett to come along a little bit faster. but like that's your guy now. That's a starting tackle that you have.
I don't know that I would say miss after miss, but I would look at what they chose to do in the front seven last year. And other than Williams Winery, I know Deshaun McCullough had moments, but it felt like they came up a little, they either misidentified what was on their roster, which is a sort of its own miss, or they didn't have the ability to do more than Jalen George and Gabe Moore at a spot where it felt like you needed to at least get one more piece in the middle. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think people wanted more out of Marquette, Watson, Trent.
That one hurt.
Expectations were higher. I would still take some of that back to what was the coaching staff like? What position were they putting them in? Obviously, like the more we learn as we learned as we got into November, and then the way the coaching staff kind of talked about things, talked about each other. John Butler, in particular, the way he was calling the defense. Like some of it can be attributed to that, but certainly when I think about what you were getting out of like from his time at Georgia Southern and how well he played, you wanted more out of Watson Trent. And we saw last year in the portal, you just really didn't go get game breakers on the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean and we'll see it so far. Anthony Jones, and then they were able to bring in the junior transfer guy, a junior college transfer guy in how do you pronounce that name? Do you have that pronunciation? Is that Burbia? Andy. Okay, Andy. You brought in junior college defensive lineman Andy, who is a big get. I mean, this was someone that they had to fight for. You have the Iowa Western thing there, which I know has popped up a lot. I've been asked about why Nebraska hasn't ever brought people in from Iowa Western. I would point out that Matt Rule, this is the first junior college player he's taken, to my knowledge, at least in terms of like the scholarship thing here. So they haven't really looked that route a whole lot. And so this is, it's a big get. And then you've got, is it Jashir Whittington is someone that they're after as well. And so,
Berberia.
Andy
Berberia.
Okay. Berberia. So Andy Berberia is the defensive tackle from Iowa Western that'll be joining. I think there's a lot of hope that he can come in, and that defensive line picture is going to be kind of interesting with Van Poppel and with Winery, Petchak. I'm interested in like probably a little bit early, but like what does a Tyson Terry look like this spring? Is he able to be out there and be a part of that thing? I know they were very excited about Malcolm Simpson, and he had, I believe, surgery this last season. And so will he be available for the spring? Some of it is who's out there and what can you sort of get a feel for, but you're hoping that they go out and find a little bit more here in the portal. So
back to your question though,
go for it.
Yes, with Addison Williams sticking around and what they were able to do with Andrew Marshall, that does make me more hopeful than maybe looking at some of the misses, near misses, not exactly gets that we just talked about, especially on that front seven. But when talking about your back line of guys, this makes me more hopeful for when you are bringing in some of those guys at safety and corner and defensive back and moving them around, especially as they get the continuity of still working with that defensive backs coach and now going into a system and a defensive coordinator that has more of a proven history of success at the collegiate level.
Yeah, I am just really intrigued because you have all these bodies and sort of how this shapes out. And, Tim Verghese was on here on Thursdays, as part of the Building Block Thursdays, and was talking about the waves. And so if we're in the middle of this second wave, if there's a third wave for Nebraska, like, does that mean there's some guys that could still enter? Is there a possibility they have some defensive backs that might now leave because they have some other ones coming in? So there's just this weird thing about the portal is that at no point are you settled with your own roster while you're attempting to add to it. And it's so different than every other aspect. Like people want to compare it to free agency. Well, in NFL free agency with the contracts, it's not like if you bring in a quarterback, you also have a quarterback that's going out at the exact same time. I mean, you might cut a guy at some point, or you might trade somebody, but it's not quite the same as free agency. It's certainly not the same as high school recruiting. So there's just a lot about it that we're just sort of feeling our way through. And then you have still two teams that are playing in Indiana, Miami. What does it look like when they're finished playing? What does it look like? Do we have some entrants from Ole Miss that could be coming, or entrants from Oregon that could be coming. I know that there's some movement expected certainly with Oregon. So there's just still so much to happen, even though it feels like a lot has already happened with the portal.
And by the way, I love the way Tim describes that as coming in waves, and you're in the second wave. When does the third wave pop up, especially for Nebraska? Really, you're just waiting for January 16th, 12:01. Like, that's what Matt Rhule is waiting for. Now, for the rest of us, you get to the 16th, by the way, there might still be guys you learn that day or the next day about being in the portal, because compliance has got 48 hours after getting notice to go ahead and get all that paperwork done. That's a whole thing. So don't get to the weekend and think that necessarily it's over. Like, you still have a little bit more time before you can take a deep breath. But I do think overall, as you look at what Nebraska has added compared to what Nebraska has lost, and maybe some of this is here's the potential of guys that haven't played here. Like, we haven't seen them in the Scarlet and Cream. To me, it feels like it outweighs what's going out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And like I said, there's still a lot to kind of figure out. I mean, if you think about it, Kaleb, is there, defensive line and running back, aside from that, is there another position you're kind of clued in on to see what Nebraska does? We know they brought in some offensive linemen. Feels like they're maybe done at linebacker and at defensive back at this point in time. So are we down to sort of three spots and quarterback? So are we sort of down to three spots where if they're going to add, it's likely going to be edge rusher, defensive line. So call that just sort of one thing, running back and offensive line. Is that largely how it feels at this point?
Yeah, I wouldn't be upset about if there was another, like, more of an impact linebacker that they could bring in as well. I love getting linebackers that can impact the game. And maybe that is some of we were spoiled with Levante David being in Lincoln and then getting to watch him play a decade plus with the Buccaneers. So it's like, we got to see what that looks like. I want a lot more of that here. So I wouldn't be upset about getting another linebacker. Is the quarterback going to come out of the 2026 class? We've been like, so now you finally get that depth, but it's also someone who's maybe bridging some of a developmental gap for you. And then, running back. Like, to me, it just doesn't hit home, or it doesn't get through to me that the coaching staff loved what they saw out of the running backs in the bowl game for those first two drives. It just doesn't do anything for me what we were able to see them do over the course of the season, get almost 0 touches until the bowl game, and the coaching staff be content with, these are the guys. These are the guys you're going to go into the next season with. There's got to be someone out there. And I think there's a number of intriguing names. To me, it was a little disappointing to not get the Minnesota guy and be higher on his list. You saw Dante Dowdell, another guy who was at Nebraska a year ago and went away, and now he's back in the portal. And you always wait to see, when Miami's season is done, does that mean Charmar Brown could potentially finally end up back here, since Nebraska couldn't pay him well enough a year ago? I think whoever it is, you have to go get somebody that you are looking at as your top running back, even if that means going through the spring and having a competition and a Quentin Ives or a Mekhi Nelson beats them out. Whatever it is, you have to bring someone in with the intention of them competing for a starting spot. Also knowing that there's not a second window. You can have that competition now and someone not get their feelings hurt and leave in 3 months.
Well, and then also, I mean, just historically, this is, of the 3 years of Matt Rhule, they've only had one where they haven't had to cycle through running backs. I mean, so, and, Emmett Johnson's now gone. Maybe he was just kind of the outlier coming from third place or fourth place, wherever he was in 23, third place again in 24. And then, he was a starter, obviously, and took the lion's share of everything, and an All-American. And it just feels like you should be able to strike when the iron is hot there. But that's the part of this where the waves are just sort of weird. Like, again, it's not like free agency, because if it's free agency, First of all, nobody's still playing football during the middle of free agency. That's the part of the portal that
this calendar is so dumb.
When we talk about the calendar and everyone's like, well, where should the portal cycle go? And it's like, well, why don't you get the games all done and stop pretending like it's the finals that you're worried about? Like you're worried about the academics. Nobody's worried about the academics anymore. This isn't, they're all taking TV with Tony at Western State or wherever Pete Bell's coaching, and so it's an issue that if they could get these games done before the portal starts, I think that would help calm some of this down too. But if you're banking on someone that hasn't gone in yet, and then it doesn't happen, they haven't even brought anyone in to visit. Like that's the other thing at running back too. Like it either has to work or you're going to have so much egg on your face that it's going to be an utter disaster. So, we'll see how that one plays out.
Mike, that would make a year that has already happened of questions on who are you going to get in to back up Emmett Johnson. We did that all spring through multiple portal windows. And then in the fall, who's the number 2 guy? Okay, Quentin Ives is hurt. Okay, this Janiran Bonner is out for the season, and maybe that's a guy that you wanted to move all around in kind of a gadget role. You get halfway through the season. Okay, who's your number 2? Kind of how does that all shake itself out? Got to the bowl game and had the questions. And now we're almost to the end of the portal where guys can jump in, and we're still asking that question, which guess what? If they don't add anyone, Matt Rule, not to give some like early free advice, you better start coming up with an answer when we get to the start of spring practices, because one of the first questions is, what the hell's happening at running back?
Yeah. Well, we shall see. I should point out in the comments, Brian says that unfortunately there are universities attached to our football program. I do recognize this, and I get that there are tests that are taken at the end of the semester. I just think that they could manage to figure out how to make this work within the calendar. I don't care if it's you start a week earlier. I don't really care how it's done. I just don't need to see this go into the middle of January anymore. And so I there's so much of college football that's like antiquated, where it's like we're protecting the January 1st bowls mainly for the Rose Bowl. And now it's not even nice weather there anymore. They gave us a gloomy, rainy Rose Bowl, and this is what we're protecting on January 1. I mean, does anybody really care if a playoff game is happening on December 14th? I get like you don't want them to happen any more than once a week. So you're sort of, you got to have a 4-week stretch to run through it there. But then I understand there's also an emphasis to protect Army Navy, which this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion. I don't think we need to do that. You can play that on conference championship week. There's got to be ways to get this schedule to where the portal could start. Even if the portal started like today, it would be better than starting it when the season is still ongoing.
To me, the ideal way you update the calendar, because you also have like coaches that leave. Think about Lane Kiffin. He could have been part of a college football playoff run to the semifinals. Instead, he wasn't even there for the playoff at all. And it's a mishmash of these coaches are here, but they're leaving. And okay, what players might they be tampering with? All of those things. To me, it's eventually you're going to get rid of the conference championship games, even though those are a little bit lucrative. You'll make it up on the back end with whatever the playoff expands to. And you probably move the portal window from this pre-spring semester to at the end of the spring semester. So like that's probably more of what you get so that you can go through and finish whatever it ends up being, whether it's you get the national championship on New Year's Day or you get it in mid-January, whatever you get with that playoff, there's not portal stuff happening. There's not coaching changes constantly happening because you have to get your coach in place and their staff in place, and you're going through the portal and this other team is still playing their games and you just went through a bowl game with one team and now you're on another team. You have to move the portal away from where any of that can overlap. And ultimately, I think the expansion of the playoff is going to move the conference champion or eliminate the conference championship games anyway. So there's a lot that they have to fix with the calendar that is ultimately just broken right now, trying to follow any of this. and argue that it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and something has to be sacrificed no matter what. And so when they figure out how to best do that, we will see what it looks like. One last player from the portal to mention here, Jack Wills. Nebraska has a long snapper for the next year. It does feel like they might just use the portal to find their long snapper every year. I don't hate it. Seems like it went very well with Kevin Gallick, who's part of legislation. So I don't know what happens if he's able to get an extra year. Are they then allowed to transfer? Would you keep him around? Does Jack Wills have extra time, available? Is he a senior, or does he have multiple years of eligibility? Do you redshirt him? So that's a question. If Kevin Gallick
Wills was a freshman this fall.
Okay, so there you go. So maybe you're going to have a long snapper in the hopper, and if you get Kevin Gallick back, we
are redshirting long snappers.
Yeah, there you go. That's the long-term thinking we're getting here, both from Unemployed and also potentially Nebraska. All right, I mentioned I want to do a blind ranking, a blind top 5 ranking. If you've never, Kaleb, are you familiar with what this is?
Yes.
Okay. For those that have never heard of such a concept, get familiar. It's going to happen all week long. And then we'll see if this is something I'm going to keep around or not. I suspect people will like it. I don't know if the guests will, but that's not really my problem. That's their problem. I am going to give Kaleb, and today's topic is going to be Nebraska's transfer portal additions. He is going to rank them, and I am going to give him one
all
name.
Of them? Are we offense or defense?
No, it's all of them. It's the whole. You could have anybody that's transferring into Nebraska as a commitment, and then you have to rank them blindly 1 through 5, and then work off of that ranking. So, we'll just we'll dive into this, and we will see how Kaleb does, and we will start with Tree Babalade. Where are you putting him 1 through 5?
I am going to put Babalade 2.
Babalade goes at 2. All right.
We're going to go 2 right away.
Prime spot. That's a tackle that Nebraska has coming in from South Carolina. And that's an issue where they have, they have concerns.
That's the thing is you went and you got a guy who can come in and be a starter right away at a very much needed position of need. So yeah, I've got him at 2, and I'm going to hate this because you're probably going to go Calandria and like McDougal the next 2.
You don't know what I'm going to do. And that's what's great about it. All right. We are going to go with Anthony Jones.
Anthony Jones. Okay. I will say 4. I'll say 4. I'll leave some wiggle room in there.
Defensive lineman from UCLA, also from several other schools. Hasn't had a lot of production. I don't have a ton of hope for Anthony Jones to just magically find production here at Nebraska, but you have him at 4. You ready for the next name?
Yes.
Owen Chambliss.
I hate where this is because now I have to start going, okay, who might you say?
That's the game.
I'm going to go Owen Chambliss. I'm going to say 1.
Okay. Why 1? Why is he at 1 for you here?
Again, it's something that I mentioned maybe 10 minutes ago. I love linebackers that can go get the job done. That's a guy who has done it, and he's coming over and he's working with coaches he's familiar with Rob Orrick. So that's a guy that I think can be an anchor in the middle of that defense. He can get up into the line of scrimmage. He can play a little bit in coverage. So I'm going to go with 1, and I'm banking on like names happening or not happening at this point.
Okay, so at 1 you have Owen Chambliss. At 2 you have Tree Babalade. At 4 you have Anthony Jones. So you have 2 spots left. There's 2 names left. What are you going to get? You're going to get Quasi Gilmer for the 4th name. 3 or 5?
I'm gonna put Gilmer at 5. I like the addition to the offense since you're losing Dane Key. I also know that like you're bringing back talented guys with Isaiah Hunter and Ja'Cory Barney. Janiran Bonner gets healthy. You were running a slot as one of your running backs. So it's like I think Nebraska's fine at wideout, but also we haven't seen this offense decide to unleash the wideouts outside of like some screens or get really creative in getting them the ball. So I think the impact becomes limited by whatever you think the ceiling of the offense is.
All right. Well, so you filled out 1-2 with Chambliss and with Babalade, and you have, it looks like, what did we go with? Jones at 4.
Jones at 4 and Gilmer at 5.
Gilmer at 5. And then we have I've already screwed up how to pronounce his name. We go with
it's going to be Calandria, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
All right. Yeah, so at 3, and I'm fine with that. I probably would have flipped him and Chambliss if like you knew the order that guys were coming in, but realistically, where he's at there, 3 behind a guy that you needed at tackle and a guy that you needed in the middle of your linebacking group, I'm okay with that. I would have liked to flip 1 and 3 ultimately, like looking back on it, but I'm not as disappointed in a blind ranking as maybe I've been on other attempts in the past.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if this is still around next week. We'll see if Kaleb has to go through the blind rankings yet again. I do want to kind of switch the conversation here away from the portal a little bit. I know it's sort of portal centric, but that's kind of what this is right now. And I want to talk about a couple of these guys that have returned for Nebraska. And I know that it's still kind of part of the portal conversation, but I am kind of fascinated that Willis McGahee IV is coming back to Nebraska. There's a guy that he flashed a lot in 2024. Whatever the opposite of flashing would be in 25 is sort of how 2025 went for him. Yeah, Braylon Prude, who's been one of the more fascinating recruits that Matt Rule has went out and signed. He didn't play a lot in high school, but he was making travel rosters at times as a freshman, and physically very gifted, sort of a unique body build, as kind of a back 7 player, if you would. He could end up at linebacker by the time his career is all done, could stay in the defensive backfield. And then Larry Tarver, who I think the staff was pretty excited about pulling him out of Miami. And so you've got these guys in McGahee and Tarver and Prude. They've all chosen to come back to Nebraska. And what I'm curious about, Kaleb, is do you think this is a situation where they went into the portal and the options weren't as good as they wanted? So they went back to Matt Rule and they were like, hey, can we come back? Is there room for us in the end? Did you give our spot away? Or is it a situation where they go into the portal and Nebraska's assessing the portal itself and they think, we could take somebody to fill these spots, but we already know these guys. We know what they are. We know how we can use them. We can maximize our knowledge better by bringing them back. So we'll figure it out financially. It's probably not costing a lot of money. How do you think this actually played out?
Well, and I think that very last thing you said is part of it for this coaching staff. You know what these guys cost because everybody costs something. You know what these guys cost. Nebraska's looking at their options. Those guys are in there looking at theirs. And when you're looking at where Nebraska players end up, most of the guys who hit the portal from Nebraska do not go to Power 4 programs. So no matter what, you were looking at a downgrade in a program that you were going to transfer to, even if that meant more playing time, even if that meant a coach that maybe you liked more when you were getting recruited. There's all the different things that go into it, but you were probably going to be playing at a smaller school. Most likely it wasn't going to be for a ton more money when you're getting outside of the Power 4. So I think it's a little bit of both when you're looking at their options. I also think Nebraska not having a defensive line coach has made things very interesting over this entire portal cycle with guys jumping in, with maybe guys that you were hoping to go and grab out of the portal. So that to me has been interesting. If you're able to go and get some of these guys back, to me, the disappointment is that you're not finding a way to get Keona Davis back. If there's multiple guys going in the portal and coming back or transferring other places and coming back, like that's one of those names. And kind of in the same way that the staff was really excited about Larry Tarver, and like we've been really excited about Willis McGahee IV. There's a lot of excitement and potential about what Keona Davis can do, and he seems out the door for good in a not coming back in the same way the trio of guys that you mentioned.
Yeah, and that's a guy that you would have loved to. And this is again where I don't understand how Matt Rule is now on January 12th and doesn't have a defensive line coach. And I get, okay, it could be Corey Brown, and we can have that discussion here in a little bit with what you've heard and everything else. But it's not like you didn't know these dates, and it's certainly not like you didn't know that you were moving on from Terry Braden in December. So how did you get to this point where you're trying to bring in defensive linemen in the portal and you don't have a defensive line coach? And I don't care about Elijah Robinson. Don't give me that.
Mm-hmm.
You missed on your guy, go get somebody else. You missed on Kenny Minchie, you had a quarterback the next day. You know, like, do we need the Bill Moose? You got a list in the drawer of your desk or something? Like, I don't get it. And maybe they got turned down by multiple people, but whenever Matt Rule talks next, and I know that this is a question that's near and dear to the Nebraska fan base, but there's more than enough media people talking about this. Like, how, if it was ultimately going to be Corey Brown, why wasn't it Corey Brown in the middle of December?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like they just discovered him. He coached with Orich in the past. Like, I don't know that there's an answer I'm going to find acceptable either, Kaleb. So maybe that's more on me. Like, I've already made my decision and it's absent of information, but here would be my counter argument. It's January 12th. You have guys going into the portal that are defensive linemen. You're trying to get defensive linemen as commitments and as portal additions and everything else, and you don't have this locked up. Like, I don't understand it at all. You know, and there's only so much you can just say other than, you know, they think they can just get by without having to go have a defensive line coach when the portal's going on. And by the time he's officially brought in, if it is Corey Brown, you're going to be down to how many days left, you know, of guys going in and everything else. So I don't get it. I just don't. And, you know, whenever Matt Rule talks again, he will be asked about it. And we're almost at the point where nothing he says is going to make any sense to me.
Right. Well, and maybe the pitch to guys in the portal or guys still on the roster, or you're looking at 2027s, was that Rule was just going to put his hat on backwards and he'll take care of you. And that's what's going to handle the defensive line, because that's what handled it in December. You're right, though. If it's going to be Corey Brown, then you should have known that a month ago. If it was going to be Elijah Robinson, okay, like you missed that. It happens. You want somebody. So
who's next?
Yeah, who's next? I would have understood getting into January, getting into last week, if it would have been Frank Oakham, former Rule staffer, now the assistant D-line coach for the Texans. I would have understood that because it's an NFL assistant that you've worked with before that needed to get to the end of the regular season before they announced it. Now, we saw that it didn't look that great a year ago, taking your defensive lineman from an NFL team that had to go play through their playoffs, and then you're like, you don't have them on campus, and you're not able to do the things you want to do. But I would have at least understood that. Now, you're right. If it was ultimately going to be this guy, what took you so long to get him? How many people had to say no for you to get Corey Brown to be your guy? If ultimately, officially, that becomes who your guy is.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm anxiously awaiting the answer, and already in my brain, it's crafting the response of this doesn't make any sense. You know, so again, that's on me. I've got to at least allow for the explanation, but this is such a critical piece of your roster. And every single time I'm watching, and it's not even just a college football playoff, watch the NFL. Like, the defensive line, I don't know. It's always been incredibly valuable. It feels like it's dictating games even more than ever. And that's got to be the most, hyperbole-based statement that you can make. I mean, the defensive line has always been massively valuable, but every one of these college football playoff teams, like the defensive line, part of why Indiana is so good is they're really good up front. part of why everyone that ever watches Miami is like, man, these guys are really physical. It's because they're good up front. They put so much emphasis and resource into this. Texas Tech, incredible up front. Oregon, good up front. Ohio State, good up front. Ole Miss, how hard was it to watch Prince Will in college football playoff games be the guy that you thought he was when you went and recruited him out of high school, and then couldn't turn him loose? And there was a lot. I think there was a lot personality wise where it wasn't a good fit. I don't know that even if he had played well, it was going to be a good fit, whatever. But those are the kind of guys you need, and you're not going to get them if you don't have a defensive line coach in January during portal season. Full stop.
Not just dictating games in the sense the same way the Big Ten wants to claim them, having an Ndamukong Suh or a Jared Crick, like that changes the way your whole defense can play. But Indiana's defensive line played so well, Dante Moore is going to come back for another year. Like that's what they did this week or just a few days ago. Like when you're looking at that and all of Dylan Raiola's out there in Eugene, what's that going to look like? Well, Dante Moore's probably going to come back because his last college game looked terrible.
Is he really going to come back and Dylan's going to go sit a year out?
I think so. I think he'll just recover for the whole year and he'll learn the Lanning system. And Oregon will be going through their transition without having Will Stein as the offensive coordinator.
So then that would set up the potential for Dylan Raiola to come to Memorial Stadium in 2027?
Yes.
Will that be a blackout?
If we're still doing blackouts, like is that going to continue to be a thing? Because the last time you had a blackout, you lost your franchise quarterback, and then he will be.
Yeah, but I think it's the idea that you're almost trolling him with this, like you're trying to get into his head.
But was it only Dylan who was going back and forth with the suggestions of this is what we have to do uniform wise? We want to wear the all whites. We want to wear the all reds.
Just win games. Just win some.
Let's spin more wins, baby.
From the comment, Austin points out that Nebraska won't have a defensive line coach. It'll be a shared between defensive tackle and defensive end. With Manning, who Roy Manning will be the edge coach. I mean, that's fair. They can acknowledge that. That's fair.
Well, you can have unlimited coaches, so why would you not have someone kind of oversee that, even if those guys are running those specific spots?
Yeah, and just to belabor the point, I mean, it's still costing you the ability to bring in defensive linemen from the portal. I mean, Tim was on Thursday saying that. He was on the radio show that I'm now employed by, making this whole podcast utterly useless. No. The podcast is certainly not useless. The name we'll figure out, but it has mattered. Like I think it'd be a farce to say that it hasn't. And the annoying thing is it was predictable that it was going to matter, and we still got here anyways. But that's just sort of where Nebraska football finds itself here as we begin 2026. All right. Well, that segment felt like it was offering a lot of free advice, and it wasn't even the segment called free advice. So here is the portion of today's show where we are going to offer some free advice to those that we think need it. And there's always people that need free advice. I will start today, Kaleb, and I have a good one here. Free advice. If you are starting a podcast built around your professional work status, you should plan to have phone calls out of the blue that totally change what you thought was going to happen. And, then you don't worry about it because life is good. That's my free advice.
Free advice.
That might be very specifically aimed at one person. But
are you able to send that free advice back in time a week ago?
Yeah, I mean, a week might even be too long. It'd be like 4 or 5 days ago. Like, hey, what are you doing on Thursday?
Some free advice for Dylan Raiola. Unless it is a jersey, like a game jersey you have that you are keeping for memorabilia, burn everything with 3 stripes on it. The one thing you cannot do in Eugene is accidentally wear that Adidas logo anywhere. You've probably got closets full of gear, more than I have even owned in my life. Burn it. Or better yet, and this is a better use of resources, find the local Goodwill, go donate it somewhere. people will enjoy those high quality threads that probably weren't even available for purchase, because that's what Adidas loves to do with their best products, is give them to players and coaches and not offer them up for sale. Go get rid of them. At no point take them out of a closet with the intention for you to wear anywhere.
Do you think like he'll do the thing that athletes have kind of started to do where they just sell it back to the fan base? They've got this stuff that they're, no longer going to wear or use, their career's over or whatever. And then they kind of have their own like internet rummage sale.
What is that? It's like the players shop or NIL something.
Oh, is there an actual, like, I've just seen it to where, Jazz did this when her career finished with both Oregon and with Nebraska. I mean, is Dylan Raiola the player to be named later for that trade for Nebraska to get to multiple NCAA tournaments? Because I'll be honest, not the worst deal for Nebraska.
Maybe. Now it's going to be interesting because you had guys like Thomas Fedoni. He just posted to Facebook that he was having a garage sale.
Yeah, and media went and checked out what the wares were and did some interviews. That's the garage sale might have been the one thing from the Husker games that was universally liked by everybody.
No, I loved that. Oh my God. Now
they should find a way to bring that back, but they should do it to where it's more like a flea market and the athletes bring their stuff to it and they have to sit and man their shops. That would be fantastic.
Don't let the guys who are the first. Here's some free advice for the Nebraska athletic department. If you take anything from the Husker games and bring it back this spring, don't let the first 10 guys through the door grab all the good stuff and have guys just carrying armfuls of things to go purchase. This should be so much about trying to spread the wealth on getting gear into more fans' hands, especially if a lot of that gear can end up in the hands of kids. Because that's the part that is so much more fun. If you can get it into the fans that aren't just trying to make an extra buck because they were able to get there 4 hours before anyone else and stand in line. Like fix whatever it is that can be fixed there, but absolutely make the garage sale thing happen again.
Here's some free advice to Big Ten basketball teams. You might think you're safe. You might think you have the game in hand. Nebraska basketball will not die. It is Jason Voorhees. It is Michael Myers. It is whatever. It's Ghostface. It's Leatherface. It's all the faces. Nebraska basketball will not die, and they are coming for you with a vengeance. There is no lead that is safe. There is nowhere to hide. They're coming for you. So there's really nothing at the end of this advice. It's just to tell you, your grave's already been dug. You just aren't lying in it yet.
The free advice is accept where you're at when the Huskers roll into town. By the way, in the new poll that came out this hour, Nebraska, number 8 in the country, moves ahead of BYU, who was ahead of Nebraska last week, moves in front of Gonzaga. Nebraska sits one spot behind Houston, and then at Duke, Purdue, Michigan falls to number 4, UConn at 3, Iowa State 2, Arizona at 1.
It's a little curious what more they would need to do after a week where you just went twice on the road against teams that are very likely tournament teams to move ahead of the teams that have one loss at this point in time.
Be named one of the teams with one loss.
Yeah, it at this point, it's really just a name on the front that is preventing them because their resume is spectacular.
Isn't this? This is so much, Mike. This is the opposite of when you're looking at like preseason polls or where is Nebraska football going to be, and it's like because of the name, you might sneak in at 25 or 24 because of the name. Not because of the way anything has gone for the last decade, not because of the way stuff has shown itself on the field. And for Nebraska basketball, it's the other way. You can be really good. The last 3 years, especially under Fred Hoiberg, have been really good in comparison to the previous 5. But it still says Nebraska on the uniform.
Still says Nebraska on the uniform. Well, we'll see what Oregon thinks about it. We will see what Brian Christopherson thinks on a Nebrasketball Tuesday when we return tomorrow. Kaleb, do you have any final advice you want to give out? I don't want to leave you short here. Is there any more advice you'd like to dole out here today?
Oh man, after those last two games, there's some free advice. Get the caffeine and coffee going in the middle of the afternoon because you got a Tuesday 8 p.m. tip lined up, Huskers and Ducks. And yes, is this Oregon gets Dylan Raiola and Nebraska gets to beat the crap out of you? That's the trade.
I'll take it. Sign me up now. All right. Well, and speaking of things that you can sign up for, you can subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe on YouTube to the channel so you are equipped to have this pop up wherever you want to watch Unemployed with Mike Schaefer. And so we'll be back tomorrow, like I said, Nebrasketball Tuesday with Brian Christopherson. It'll be live at noon. We are going to, if you thought Kaleb struggled with a blind ranking, BC has likely never heard of it and will struggle greatly. I know there's some people that want him to guess a random Husker Hooper. I might find some people that just put some clues together and just read them out and make him go through that. Tomorrow's show is going to be
I have a random Husker Hooper for you. Okay,
send it in. Send it in. If people have any feedback, feel free. Feedback Friday was a hit with Jack Mitchell. That, of course, will be back at the end of the week. Hit us up, unemployedi80@gmail.com. Of course, you can tweet at us. You can find us on the Discord. You can get in the comments here on YouTube. Thank you, everybody, for spending your Monday noon hour with Kaleb Henry and myself, Mike Schaefer. We'll be back tomorrow with more Unemployed.